Okay, this video here is basically going to go over the relay. So the fan relay, ignition relay, this was the little culprit that was bad in my 2010 Yamaha R1. So these two do the fan. That's the fan. These two are part of the ignition. And there's little numbers in there, but you can't see them. I couldn't see them for anything. I mean, they're very difficult to see and read. But anyway, this is the old one. I got the new one. I tested it out. Everything ohmed out fine. This one here shows you the windings. So it's very similar to a small transformer. And the small transformer, basically, depending on if you want it higher amperes, lower amperes, it's the windings on these things basically are either going to be tighter or looser. So tighter windings, higher amperes, loose windings, lower amperes. And this little guy here is a switch, and basically that's all it does. So if you take note, and you can see that guy right there, you can see that he's burned out a bit. And that's the part of it that wasn't working anymore. So anyway, we go through, and when I set my meter, I set it ohms and continuity. So ohms, we're testing it to see what type of ohms it has, and continuity basically means, is there a break in the line? So basically it tests for any break in the line. And what I do typically, when I put it on continuity or ohm, I'll touch these. So basically I'm touching these together, and that tells me there's continuity and that it's working and reading correctly. So with this, we'll come into this guy. We'll test the fan one first, and it'll give you, it'll tell us, it'll give us basically the OL. So what does OL stand for? Overload, open line, that kind of thing. When we test out the ignition side, which isn't bad, you're going to see it's going to give us an ohm reading. Let's not get that in the way. Sorry about that. I'm just working with two hands and trying to show what it's going to do. So let's touch this guy. See there? And then it gives us ohms. So part of the thing with that is finding out what type of ohm reading is that going to get. So when we touch the fan, once again, without touching the other two, you get the OL. So again, it's overload. So we know that it's bad. And that's typically the way that works. And for most electrical, you can figure that kind of stuff out. So I put the new one in my R1, and fans work great, but they usually kick on somewhere between 219 and 220 on the temperature, but they kick on and they're very strong. Before, I put some spacer washers on the fans, that way they didn't touch the radiator, because I know my mechanic guy said that one was rubbing, so I took care of that myself, and it works just great. Anyhow, for those of you who might want to be able to do this stuff and do it on your own and ohm things out so that you're capable of knowing how to do that, that's an idea right there. So if you get a multimeter or something like that, you set it on ohms and continuity, and the continuity has that little symbol. It's not the ground symbol, because the ground symbol will have a few lines, but they'll get smaller. But when you do that, you touch the two leads together, and as it rings, then you'll know, hey, okay, it's working properly. And the ohms, again, in order to find out what the proper ohms are to this, you literally have to go in and find out who makes the part and go from there and ask them what type of ohms. It's kind of like a heated floor. So wiring in a heated floor, we're always ohming out and testing continuity on the lines, on the thermostat that goes in and the lines that run through to heat the floor. But that way we know if there's continuity in it, or if there's a break, or the ohms have dropped. But typically they'll basically tell us how many ohms it's supposed to have in it, and if it's more or less or drop down significant, then we know there's something wrong. But with the relay, it's very similar. Again, you'd have to call the manufacturer or whoever designs these relays to find out what type of ohm readings they're supposed to have. So hopefully this will help you. That way you're able to troubleshoot your fans and relays, things like that, and then rectify the problem. But that's what they look like right there, just so you know what they look like inside, because I know some people get pretty curious, what do they look like inside? And that's exactly what they look like, at least this one does. So yeah, hopefully that helps. On my last video I kind of explained how I was kind of doing it while it was on the bike and everything, and you can look at that video if you need more info on the R1 2010. Again, I don't know if it applies to every R1, but it's very similar. Even if it's bad, you should be able to look at the wiring. You got to find the positive, and you got to find the 0 volt, negative, neutral, and go from there. But always be careful with your electrical systems, because you don't want to accidentally blow a fuse or something. I mean, fuse is cheap, but you just don't want to do things that might hurt your bike. So again, one of the biggest things I always do, be vigilant and practice. I hope this helps.